Good morning, good morning, good morning. We finally made it. Looks like we made it. It is Friday the 29th of August. All day you join myself and the magnificent Mr. Michael Brown for your final morning blast of the week, where we will be giving you a review of yesterday's market actions and news and whatnot, and a look at today's market action. Well, obviously not predicting market action, but we can have a look at today and preview today. But before we do, I'll get the legals out of the way because it's Friday and I'm not hungover for the first time ever. So this strike while the iron's hot. Nothing discussed in the Spaces session constitute trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ, myself, Ryan Paisley, or indeed he says he's not hungover, but maybe slightly worse for wear, Mr. Michael Brown.
Oh, a very good morning, Ryan. Good morning, everyone. Very happy Friday. I'm actually feeling absolutely fine this morning, although the seasons have certainly changed. I'm going to be keeping an eye out for Noah. He's going to come past in his ark in a moment, I think.
Yeah, no, it's
Biblical rain in Blackheath this morning.
Yeah, it's pissing down in Whitstable today as well. I'm not going to lie, my friend. When I knew you were out last night, and when I decided to be the adult and say, look, actually, I've got too much work on, I can't come into town and party yesterday, I was praying that this morning you'll be an absolute fucking mess.
No,
Um,
I'm fine. And good morning to Paul, who was out and about last night as
yeah,
well. And I
yeah,
see
yeah.
that, as expected,
Oh,
young
as
Thomas
expected.
has
Where is
not
he? I
made this
strolled
call
around,
this morning.
not there.
Ah,
Yeah,
dearie me.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, right, getting all your AI chip names in early.
Well, yeah. Before we get corrected, I'm not going to start there. I'm going to actually start with some of the data we had out of the States
Go
yesterday,
for it.
because it was market action was relatively subdued once again. I think I picked a decent week to take off the desk, although we did see equities gaining further ground. The S&P up by 0.3%, the Nasdaq up by 0.6%, and that came obviously as markets moved past the marginal declines that we saw in Nvidia after their earnings on Wednesday evening. In terms of that US data that we had yesterday, better than expected. We had a decent upward revision on the Q2 GDP number, although of course this is very backward looking. The economy growing by 3.3% on an annualized quarter-on-quarter basis in the 3 months to June. That was up from the 3% that we saw in the initial estimate, although do recall, of course, that the economy contracted by 0.5% in the first 3 months of the year, and the data is still very, very skewed by all of the tariff front running that was going on in the first quarter of 2025. We also had better than expected jobless claims stats out of the US yesterday as well. Initial claims at 229,000 in the week to the 23rd of August, down from a prior 235,000. Continuing claims in the week to the 16th of August, which of course coincides with the August non-farm payroll survey week. They were at 1.954 million, down for a prior 1.972 million. And of course that prior print was the highest level since 2021. So potentially signs that the labour market is not necessarily in as bad shape as the last jobs report had implied. Speaking of that jobs report, we heard from Fed Governor Waller overnight. He was talking about how he would support a 25 basis point cut at the September FOMC meeting. Not entirely surprising, given that he dissented in favour of such a cut at the July meeting. But he was also talking about how he would potentially see a 50 basis point cut as appropriate if the August jobs report is also soft. So very much reiterating the importance of the jobs data that we get this time next week. Sticking with the Fed Governor Cook, she has filed a lawsuit to sue President Trump over his move to oust her from the Fed board. Of course, this is very much as expected. I am not a lawyer, I will stress that right now, but one thing I did think was quite interesting in that lawsuit is she didn't actually deny the allegations of mortgage fraud, which is slightly peculiar. If you didn't do it, then surely you'd use your lawsuit to say, I didn't do it. Also overnight, the world's biggest moron, Bill Pulte, has apparently said, filed a third set of charges against Governor
Well, and
Cook.
also this moron. So one, I really wish Cook would throw him into the lawsuit as well. Just for the
Oh,
shits and
he is in
giggles.
there, I think.
Oh, is he? Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
But also, did you? Well, I'm sure you saw his message last night. Well, I think you saw it this morning. So I think I saw you tweet about it. About he's blaming mortgage fraud for the global financial crisis.
Oh yes, he is. Yeah, he is.
Yeah, why
Which is
not?
just
Why not?
absolute nonsense. I mean, I don't even know where to start with that one, to be completely honest.
Nonsense.
Oh no. Oh no. Speaking of that lawsuit, though, I believe there is going to be a court hearing today. That's due to take place at 10 o'clock Eastern time. Again, I'm not an expert in the US legal system, but I don't think this issue is going to be settled today. That seems to be one of those court hearings that sets us up for another hearing further down the line. The key thing to focus on, though, is I think whether the court actually makes any decision on whether or not Cook can or indeed should be continuing to work as a governor while this is all going on.
Right.
Of course, one of the things that we mentioned earlier in the week is the potential for, if Cook is taking any sort of action, signing memos, writing emails right now, and then it comes out in the wash in a few months' time that actually Trump can fire her, does that mean that anything she's done is effectively null and void and we have to go back and unwind it? And it just becomes a very, very messy situation. So I think that's potentially something to keep an eye on. Lastly, on the Fed, Bloomberg reporting yesterday that Steve Moran, who is obviously currently the head of the Council of Economic Advisors, he has been nominated to fill Governor Kugler's prior spot on the Fed board. He is apparently on track to be confirmed before the next FOMC meeting. Of course, that FOMC meeting starts on the 16th of September. It is a 2-day Fed meeting, as always. The Senate Banking Committee is due to hold a hearing on Moran's nomination next week. That would then obviously need to progress to a full vote on the Senate floor, which would need to happen before the 16th of September for Moran to be at that FOMC meeting. The only question really is how big of a cut this bloke is going to vote for. The Fed
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
deliver a 25 basis point cut. I mean, this chap could vote for 100 odd basis points. Who knows? He is effectively a puppet for the president. And good morning, Tom Talks Cars. You're only 7 minutes late.
Hey,
Not too
morning,
bad for you.
Tom. Morning. Morning.
Moving on from the Fed, on the trade front, we didn't really hear anything out of the United States yesterday, but we did hear from a couple of other countries on the tariff issue. Canada, right, via sources cited by the FT, apparently they don't expect President Trump to drop all of his tariffs on the country. I mean, he hasn't dropped all of his tariffs on any other country, so finally catching up there. Also reporting overnight that Japanese trade negotiator Akazawa, he will be visiting the US as soon as the necessary arrangements have been made. Of course, he was meant to be in Washington, D.C. right now, but he's not there. He cancelled that trip, and we don't really know why. We also don't know what those necessary arrangements are. He was also talking about how he may need to visit the US at least once more before the presidential executive order on auto tariffs is issued. I'm becoming increasingly convinced that this bloke is just trying to rack up air miles at this stage. I mean, it's getting verging on the ridiculous, the number of times this chap has tried to travel to Washington, D.C., but equally verging on ridiculous how the Trump administration still haven't signed this executive order on auto tariffs. Few other bits and bobs from me. The FT reporting yesterday that Prime Minister Keir Starmer is apparently planning a cabinet reshuffle. Shuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic springs to mind, to be
Yeah.
completely honest with you. This is only likely to affect the sort of junior ministerial ranks, which normally you go, doesn't really matter. The problem is it's likely to elevate that complete moron Torsten Bell to a more senior position in the Treasury,
I
which
tell
is
you
something
what.
that should send a shiver down all of our spines. Go on.
Yeah, so speaking of that absolute wanker, sorry, Torsten, if you're listening, but you're a prick. Something that did send a shiver through my spine yesterday when someone said if he does get promoted and then Reeves gets the sack,
Oh, God. Oh, no.
Torsten would be the obvious replacement, even if it's just an interim role. Which, not going to lie, yeah, you might as well pack your bags now and fuck off.
Yeah.
Because this
Well,
place is going to
Jesus
go down the
Christ.
Swanee, which any US listeners, Swanee means the toilet.
Deary me. Yeah, I think the Reeves one is interesting because obviously we had a sort of preview of the market's potential reaction to Reeves' departure earlier in the year when she was crying in the Commons.
Yeah.
And effectively the calculus among gilt traders was whoever replaces Reeves is going to be some absolute lunatic left-winger,
Well, and
which is
this is the
probably
problem,
true.
right? And this is the problem, right? Reeves is an absolute bag of shit at what she's doing in her job, but who have Labour got to replace her? Well, I'll give you one option: Torsten Bell, and like he will literally ruin the country.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue. It's almost a case of better the devil you know.
Well, this is
We
it.
don't like Reeves. She's doing a terrible job, but it's better than the alternatives,
I
which just
can't.
are worrying.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I really well we're all hoping that she keeps her job. But,
Well,
well,
yeah,
you should
effectively,
be
yeah,
hoping. Yeah, it's incredibly counterintuitive because she's a fucking moron, and her policies are absolute batshit crazy. But in the scheme of things, they're relatively normal to some of the other absolute economic twats that are in Labour government. Because
yeah.
yeah, and don't get me wrong, I feel like I need to go and shower with bleach as soon as this show's ended. Now I've said that, but yeah, it feels to me now like literally we just need Labour or the Treasury to be damage limitation for the next few years. Labour get voted out, which is almost like, that's almost a given now, thankfully. And
Mm.
hopefully someone comes in that's maybe got some kind of business sense. I wouldn't mind if someone that comes into power next has actually done at least a bit of work experience in a real job, because none of the current Labour cabinet have. Working in a union and then go, I'm going on a rant here. But anyway, you see where I'm going with this.
Yes, I do see exactly where you're going with this one, and I fully agree. And I must admit, I never thought I'd be sat here praying that Rachel Reeves keeps her job, but there we are. The other thing that Keir Starmer is apparently doing is he wants to appoint a new economic advisor ahead of the autumn budget. So here, if you're listening, I'll give it a go. Can't be
Oh
any
no,
worse than the
no,
current
no, no.
Muppets you've got.
That's far too sensible idea. They'll choose Ronald McDonald or fucking Barney the fucking pink dinosaur, whatever he was called, or
Well,
some
we're back to
bollocks like that.
Torsten now, aren't we?
Well,
Uh,
exactly.
a few other bits and bobs from me away from the UK. Overnight, we had some data out of Japan. Actually, Ryan, your favourite economic data release, the
Yes.
Tokyo CPI figures, which came in bang in line with expectations at 2.6% on a year-on-year basis in August, a cooling from the 2.9% that we saw in July. Also, a couple of other bits and bobs from me this morning. Bloomberg reporting that New Zealand, apparently they're looking to relax their ban on home buying. Of course, years ago, New Zealand put in place this ban on a load of rich foreigners buying houses and real estate in the country. They've realised now that actually they probably need these people not
Well,
only for demographic reasons but also for their cash. So they're now trying to attract them once again.
and
Go on.
also it's not like it worked anyway, because you had like Zuckerberg and all that finding loopholes all around getting like citizenships and stuff like that, and then buying places anyway. So it's not like it worked in the first place. But yeah, Fortress New Zealand proved not to be a winner, surprisingly.
Indeed. Yeah, who could ever have seen that one coming? A country full of sheep. Anyway, last, by no means least, from me this morning, one for Tom. I've saved it till last just in the hope that he actually turns up, and here he is. Nvidia, they are apparently in talks with the US administration to sell their Blackwell AI chip to China. Of course, there were all these shenanigans earlier on in the week with the H20 chip and the Chinese saying that they don't want it anymore. This is according to Fox News citing sources, and Nvidia are reportedly willing to give the Trump administration a cut of any Blackwell sales that they make to China. The big question with that is, do the Chinese actually want to buy them? It's all well and good, the US administration saying, yes, you can sell them. But as we saw with the H20 stuff, it seems like China are trying to become increasingly
Yeah,
self-sufficient on that front. So that does by no means guarantee, this massive sort of revenue boon for Nvidia. But we will,
yeah.
of course, watch to see how that one pans out.
Well, funny enough, as Zach said, yeah, last night, hello Zach, was listening in, Fox giving it the big one that this was breaking news, but it was like this is a story that we covered like 2 days ago. This Blackwell and also this other chip that's been designed solely for the Chinese export market. It sounds like we're going to be doing one of these things where we've been talking about Nvidia and being like the cornerstone between any deal between China and the US. And we're going to go through all of these hoops and whatnot, and then China are going to go, actually, do you know what? We've already found ways to make our own chips by copying, by doing a bit of reverse engineering anyway. But anyway, thank you for that, Mr. Michael Brown. Let me read out, and also apparently Trump said it himself, according to Judith Chalmers, aka Zach.
Oh,
So just going to read, speaking of the devil, going to read out some headlines from the overnight news roundup. Do follow Zach for his tweet every morning for this. It's the best way to catch up with all the overnight news in one little bite-sized piece. We also got the Substack up and running again, so do subscribe to that. Starting off with trade and tariffs, the US tariff exemption for packages package shipments valued under $800 ends promptly on Friday, with a 6-month transition period under which Postal Service shippers can opt to pay a flat duty of $80 to $200 per package, depending on the country of origin. That's from the Trump
Did
administration.
you see? I saw
Go
this
on.
doing the rounds yesterday. There was this list of almost as long as your arm of basically countries where the postal services have now said that they're not shipping to the
Yeah,
United
right.
States,
I did
basically
see this
because
map.
there's no way to collect tariffs or
Yeah,
something,
I
which I thought
saw
was a bit
this
odd.
map, and the UK was on this map. But I know for a fact I know for a fact that I can send something to the US. So
Yeah, I didn't quite
I,
understand it either.
I've got a feeling it might be. I think someone's conflating certain postal companies within those countries have stopped posting, and they were just
Yeah,
going.
so it almost a case of like the Royal Mail aren't doing it, but say FedEx would send it,
Well,
sort of
yeah,
thing.
yeah, exactly that. Or some even like low budget shipper have decided to say they're not posting, and then someone in the US has gone, "Oh, this is a list of the countries that aren't shipping," because I know for a fact I can send something to the US. Don't
Mm.
ask me what. But yeah. Moving on. Right. Speaking of shipping, China's soybean importers are boosting purchases from Argentina and Uruguay over the next year to fill the supply gap left by the absence of US shipments as the trade war drags on between Washington and Beijing. Obviously, tuning 2:45 London time for the grain market blast. Well, I'm sure Angie will have more on that. I'm surprised she's not listening, even though she's in the Midwest. She's normally up at this time. Caterpillar, the construction equipment giant, is now expecting tariffs to have a greater impact on its finances, expecting the net impact from tariffs to be 1.5 billion to 1.8 billion this year, up from a previous range of 1.3 billion to 1.5 billion. This is based on a bit more guidance on what exactly the tariffs are, and it's obviously a lot worse. Gap, the clothing range, obviously, as I'll get in before Michael does, I shop at Gap Kids, no VAT on my clothing. Gap forecast I nearly said larger nipples, larger ripples from
Whoa.
larger ripples from tariffs this fiscal year, given recent changes in trade policy, but said it expects to mitigate any added costs over time. Remy Contro, probably going to whisper that one for the likes of you and Tom Tools Cars with a bit of a hangover this morning, expects to take a smaller hit to profits from tariffs than previously forecast after the US announced a 15% levy on European exports. Macro news, we've probably heard from Waller, from Mr. Michael Brown, said, 50% basis point cut could be warranted if NFP points to substantially weakening the economy. He'll say whatever he needs to say. You can barely see the soles of his shoes as he's hanging out of Trump's arse.
Oh.
My good dear friend Michael Brown has already talked about Tokyo inflation, so we'll move on from that. Japanese retail sales fell 1.6% from previous month in July, while factory output declined more than expected, led by cars and production machinery, according to the industry ministry. The jobless rate, on the other hand, slightly decreased to 2.3% last month. That's the lowest since 2019. China's central bank is nudging the yuan higher, stoking speculation of subtle shift in strategy towards favouring a stronger exchange rate after strong exports brightened the nation's growth outlook. Sticking with China, China's stock market is heading for a record turnover this month, underscoring the intensity of a bull run that's bringing in more investors by the day. Top Chinese banks' first half results on Friday are expected to underline the impact of a slowing loan growth in the deflationary economy, a piling up of bad loans as defaults by small businesses and consumers rise. This is narrowing margins due to lower rates. Moving over to Europe, inflation in France and Spain was a touch less than expected this month, but suggested no major deviation from the Eurozone as a whole, where price growth recently hit the European Central Bank's 2% target. In the UK, meanwhile, UK business confidence rose this month. I still don't understand how we're getting these survey data because it's definitely not rising. Apparently, it's the highest in a decade. This is
I mean,
bollocks.
it just isn't.
It's not. This is the Lloyd's business.
Like, that's
This
just.
is the Lloyd's business barometer, and I've got I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, right? I've got a funny feeling that this is one of those moments where we find out that the methodology of something that we've kind of just taken as a staple has a massive error in it or a blind spot in it, which is
Mm.
throwing up random numbers. We saw it with PPI. Remember during the height of COVID, we saw like PPI go, I think went negative at one point. It should know. No, sorry. Remember PPI was going up, and it was something to do with one of the metrics within PPI and the methodology meant we saw bids in PPI even though things were getting worse.
Yes, you're right.
So, God, how I remember that, I don't know. So, for the time
Nor do
being,
I, actually.
I'd be ignoring sentiment data like this because it's blatantly not getting better for businesses, and businesses are panicking in the UK. But anyway, South Korea. They will issue a record 232 trillion won, which in real money is 167,000, billion dollars, of bonds in 2026 to finance President Lee explanatory fiscal agenda, with government spending set to rise by a whopping 8.1%. India, their refiners have stepped up the purchases of US crude after price drops as Washington cracks down on Asian nation for buying Russian barrels. So it's maybe a glimmer of light there in a kind of conversation between India um, and the US. Sorry, Zach's messaged me and I made me giggle. Sorry, apologies about that. Geopolitics. US
Stop
Senator.
distracting him,
Yeah,
Judith. Come on,
exactly. It's
behave
geopolitics.
yourself.
Senator Roger Wicker, the chairman of the Armed Services Committee and one of the strongest advocates for Taiwan in the US Congress, he arrived in Taipei on Friday to discuss security as China ratchets up its military pressure on the island. So because of that, expect some Expect some headlines from China today saying about how angry they are that a sitting senator, someone especially someone like this sitting on the Armed Service Committee, especially the chairman that is in Taiwan, they will not take lightly to this. Japan's defense ministry is requesting a record $59.8 billion for its share of national budget for the fiscal year starting in April, according to Money, for fleets of drones and long-range missiles to counter growing challenges from China and North Korea. Speaking of China, they spent $21 billion on military exercises in the Taiwan Strait, the East and South China Sea and the Western Pacific last year. That's nearly 40% higher than 2023. That's according to the Taiwan government estimates. Finally, for me, just some equity news before I hand back to Mr. Michael Brown. Dell Technologies, they raised its outlook for the year as AI demand rages on, though softer expectations for the current quarter weighed on the stock. Supermicro Computer, they cautioned that weakness in its control related to financial disclosures could, if not fixed, hurt the company's ability to report results, quote, in a timely and accurate manner. Sounds a bit ropey. Nvidia's Vera Rubin AI chips could roll off production lines by year end, fully packaged. That's according to CTEE. Ulta Beauty, they boosted their guidance for the fiscal year after logging higher profits and sales in the latest quarter as consumers continue to prioritize beauty and wellness products. Chinese chip makers, the chip maker Cambricon Technologies issued a warning about trading risks after a surge in its stock price over the past month. Said there is a risk that the stock price may be deviated from the current fundamentals as its current price to earnings ratio is over 5,000 times. This makes Nvidia
Makes Palantir look
yeah,
cheap.
this makes Nvidia and Palantir look cheap. You know that something's wrong when when the actual company themselves is asking you not to buy it, far exceeding its industry levels. That's crazy. Yeah, PE ratio of 5,000. Yeah, brilliant. I'll take the other side of that, but I guess you'll probably go offside a mile before you come on side. China data center business owned by Bain Capital's China Data Group has drawn interest from local bidders seeking to expand in the sector to tap a boom in artificial intelligence. That's gone to Bloomberg. Chinese battery materials producer GEM Co. Posted first half profit aided by surging nickel output from plants in Indonesia. And finally for me, SoftBank Group set terms for a 200 billion yen in real money, that's $1.3 billion hybrid bond at a coupon of 4.556%, topping Japan Airlines perpetual subordinated notes and setting the highest coupon for domestically issued yen corporate bonds this year. It's one for the purists there. But that's it from me. Back to you in the studio.
Good stuff. Thank you, Ryan. In terms of today, then, a few bits and bobs on the economic docket. In about 6 minutes' time, we'll start getting the regional CPI figures out of Germany, and then that will be followed by the nationwide figure at 1 o'clock this afternoon, London time. CPI in Germany seen rising by 2.1% on a year-on-year basis in August, which will be a modest uptick from the 2% that we saw in July. Across the pond this afternoon, a few other releases out of the States. The highlight is going to be the core PCE price index. That's seen rising by 2.9% on a year-on-year basis in June, up from the 2.8% 0.8% that we saw in in June. Do remember, though, that while the PCE number is the Fed's preferred inflation metric, Powell, when he spoke at Jackson Hole last week, was placing much more emphasis on the employment side of the dual mandate. He seems to have come down on the side of the argument that tariffs are a, quote, one-time shift in the price level, as opposed to running the risk of inflation expectations becoming unanchored. The other thing to remember with PCE, and this goes for the print every month, is that it's actually relatively easy for much smarter people than me to extrapolate the PCE number from the CPI, PPI and import-export price metrics that have been released 2 or 3 weeks ago. So highly unlikely to be a market mover. In any case, money markets continuing to price around about an 85% chance that the Fed do deliver a cut at the September meeting, a 25 basis point cut that is, with about 55 basis points of easing discounted by the end of the year. Into the remainder of the afternoon, also at 1:30, we get the latest GDP stats from Canada. The Canadian economy is seen having contracted by 0.7% on an annualized quarter-on-quarter basis in Q2. That would just be the unwind of all the tariff front-running that has posed a headwind to GDP in other developed market economies as well. At 2:45 London time, we get the latest M&I Chicago PMI stats. That index expected to fall to 46.5, down for a price 47.1. As always, that data will be released 3 minutes early to those lucky folk who subscribe to MNI. And last but by no means least, in terms of scheduled events, we get the final read on consumer sentiment from the University of Michigan. That comes out at 3 o'clock this afternoon, as expected, unrevised at 58.6. Other than that, participants will also be paying attention to the ongoing shenanigans surrounding the Fed, particularly this court hearing involving Lisa Cook's potential firing. And as usual, the standing reminder for potential gapping risk over the weekend on potential trade and geopolitical headlines. And do remember, of course, that this weekend is a long weekend in the United States. All of the Yanks will be celebrating Labor Day. They love to tell us how hard they work. They work so hard that they're taking a day off to celebrate how hard they work. But what that does mean for markets is that things will likely thin out relatively early today, and also that Monday conditions will be incredibly thin and potentially a little bit more choppy as well. But for this morning and for this week, that is all from me.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much, my dear friend. Absolute rock star as always, even on your week off. Listeners, thank you as always for tuning in. We really do appreciate you. Whatever you're doing today, keep it tight, stay safe. Wishing me and Michael are both wishing you a fantastic weekend. Stay safe, and we'll see you all on. Well, we'll be here on Monday because we're grinders. Well, that came out wrong.
We are indeed. Oh, God.
God,
Right.
On that note,
Goodbye.
see you later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.